Hi, I'm Beth, and I have the great fortune to introduce you to Alexandra Meadors today. Alexandra created a fantastic website called galacticconnection.com. So, Alexandra, can you tell us about your website?
Sure. It was quite interesting the way it all came about. I was receiving constant nudging and guidance to get this website up and running, and I didn't really have any kind of background in doing that myself. And so I pretty much resisted until February 10th, which is a very infamous date for me. I went
2012?
2012. I just went ahead and I buckled down and I started the whole WordPress thing and self-taught myself. And I was instructed to put together a virtual library with current topics, but through the filter of hope and inspiration, and being able to see the progress that humanity is making instead of the other way around, looking at all the things that haven't gone right and looking at all the things that create fear. I wanted to subside the fear substantially. So that was the intention behind it. The other thing was to create a bridge, because I was noticing there is quite a gap between your spiritual groups, your ufology groups, and your metaphysical groups.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to create a bridge between those three, where literally we are the three major factions that are bringing us through to the golden age.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've seen your website, and there is an enormous amount of work that's gone into that website. I mean, you have information from around the world all compiled into one spot. So can you tell us about the information contained on the website?
yes, I primarily chose most of the hottest, latest quantum physicists, metaphysicists, archaeologists, conspiracy theorists, and of course all of your spiritual channelings, anybody that had anything to do with presenting a galactic approach. So my whole goal is to try to open people's eyes to see life through a galactic lens instead of through a planetary lens, because that was something that really affected me many years ago when I had a mentor, and it completely changed my life. So,
do you want to tell us about that right now, how that came about?
Well, I had a really horrific car accident in 2001, and in fact, February 10th. So it was not by happenstance, apparently, that I started this website.
Wow, amazing.
Yes. And so I was very, very bad off. I was injured from head to toe, and primarily all of it was soft tissue damage, as well as a lot of fractured discs in my back and my neck, and I had a lot of dislocations. Anyway, there was just a lot of pain. And because
it took you years to recover.
Yes, I was in bed for approximately 3 years, and literally my most exciting time was to go to Walgreens for 20 minutes. And that was about all I could handle. And then I had to be flat on my back again. But it took me about 11 years to get out of the significant ongoing 24/7 pain that I lived with.
And during that time, then you came to some epiphanies, you came to new knowledge, because you'd always had feelings for and an inkling for all these things that you're talking about. But that really helped you focus at that time?
Yes, I really believe that forced me to not be busy and to not fill my life with all of the mundanes and the have-tos and the tasks and the errands and I've got to earn a living. I, thank God, had excellent car insurance and an excellent car insurance company, and basically my job was to really get spiritual. I ended up becoming so into my connection with Source that it was literally a high, and it was really the only thing that could get me through the pain, because the ongoing alternative therapies that I was doing on a continual basis, they would ease the pain, they would help the pain, I would have miracle upon miracle occur, but I was still I'd get rid of pain, and then more pain would come.
Right. And you were introduced to a lot of alternative therapies at this time.
Yes, I've done I've done pretty much all of it. Everything from neurocranial restructuring to pyramid technology to scalar wave technology to QXCI machine to, of course, all the chiropractics was a very huge part of my healing process, to hands-on healing, to Reiki, to Theta,
everything.
I mean, you name it. I don't think there's anything that I didn't try because I was so hungry to get well.
Now, I don't know if the audience knows, but you are a homeopath, and so did this lead you to that profession as well?
Yes. In fact, again, not a mistake. I was working for a holistic vet, and she was using a lot of homeopathy and flower essences, and I thought to myself, here I was in a lot of pain, working with her, and I thought, God, she's doing this with animals. Why am I not doing this with myself?
Right.
And so I took the plunge and I went back to school, and I love school. I'm a perpetual student. I could be in school for the rest of my life and never get bored with it. But I really took it so seriously, I think I drove the teachers crazy. And I was studying myself on my own about 16 hours a day. And it's really because it triggered a prior memory. It triggered many past life incarnations. And I came to realize...
And that's very important.
Yes.
And you wouldn't have been in that state of mind, had you not had the accident and already been working kind of on quieting yourself down and to come to that insight to remember past lives and things like that.
Yeah. I just couldn't understand what this burning desire within me to learn as much as I could about vibrational medicine in particular. Most of my healing process was done really not on the physical. I waited till the very last minute. Of course I did chiropractics and things like massage and things, but really I was in so much pain you couldn't massage me. But the vibrational medicine was really the key, and I ended up realizing that it triggered memories of me being an alchemist, and so I've gone on from there.
Right. So I want to bring us back around to your website. So on your website you mention something about the Galactic Round Table.
Yes. Well, while I was in bed, which I had a lot of time to think, I have always had a fascination for King Arthur and Camelot and the Round Table. And in fact, the way I was brought up, my father had a philosophy minor, and he had a very core belief that we weren't all going to agree, but we could have a round table approach and be pragmatic about it. And everyone had something to say, something to contribute. It was awesome to grow up in that environment. And so I found myself, even through my sales management days, I found myself constantly making a reference to, let's have a round table, with clients and even people I was training and that kind of thing. And so as I was lying in bed, I started thinking, well, wouldn't it be cool to have a galactic round table? And I ended up becoming very, I was contacted by various groups such as the Guardian Alliance, Saint Germain, the Andromedan Council, just to name a few. I mean, there were quite a few. And I ended up seeing all the different types of beings that were there, and I just thought, I was just like, wow, I was like a kid in a candy store. It was so cool.
How exciting, yeah.
Yeah, wow, this is our future. So that was where the round table came in. I was supposed to supposedly bring together those that felt the drive that I did to put together a project that would assist with the ascension process on the planet, and bring us into the golden age, which has a lot of complexity to it.
So I know that your father was in the military, and you called yourself a military brat. And so being in the military, So, being in the military, did that, being associated with the military, did that help to open you up to galactic things? And if so, how?
That's a good question. Yes, my father was a fighter pilot, and he was stationed in all over the world. But anyway, he had several UFO experiences, and in fact was very tight-mouthed about a lot of top secret missions where he had to go in. Yeah, he had to go in, and I'm pretty sure he was involved with some of the UFO crashes that occurred. And he had such a superior flight record and was so esteemed with his skills that, he could pretty much call the shots. And I just remember growing up in the environment of seeing him absolutely obsessed with UFO anything. Any book. If we went to the store, he would buy a UFO book. If we were traveling on the plane, he was reading a UFO book. I mean, he had quite a library.
So when you started associating with these beings, it wasn't surprising to you because you already knew and understood a little bit about them before that even began, from childhood.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, my father had told me many times, I never stopped asking questions. If he gave me an answer, I would say why, to the point where I'd irritate him. But one of the things that he really pointed out to me was, how could we be so audacious to think we're the only beings alive under an omniscient, omnipotent being, whatever you want to call that higher power. And in his perspective, it was just absurd to think that we were the only, beings alive in this massive, symphony of planets and galaxies and universes.
Right. I know your inquisitive nature really shows up on your website because you have tried to answer so many questions out there. It's very comprehensive in the scope and everything.
Thank you.
So, I also was wondering, on the website, I noticed that you have a group called Royal Alliance.
Yes. So when I think I was still in bed, and I was still recouping, and I met Bella. I managed to get to a party, and I met Bella, who is our partner now. So it's officially my husband Steve, Bella, and myself were part of the Royal Alliance group. And we all had the same vision. And ironically enough, I met Bella, who shortly thereafter got in a very terrible car accident and literally went off the cliff in Palomar Mountain.
Wow. And
it's a miracle she's alive. But through that whole experience, what I realized was I was on the phone being her cheerleader, saying, hey, I've been here. You're going to make it. It's going to be okay.
And I'm sure she appreciated that.
And we could just so relate to one another and what she was going through. When you go through something that traumatic, you literally lose all of yourself. I mean, when it was as devastated as mine was, devastating, I lost myself to the point where I had no idea, why was I still here? Why did I survive? Who was I? Everything that...
I can imagine Bella and your conversations about...
Oh, yeah. It was just absolutely crazy. And, it got to a place where it was driving me crazy that I had survived the accident, which was one of the first things the cop said to Steve was, she should be dead.
Now, tell us about Steve, for those who don't know.
Oh, my. Well, man, I went to a business meeting in New York at a Kodak.
Steve is her husband.
Yeah, Steve is my husband. Oh, sorry. And I was the only salesperson in the room. There was about 8 of us being trained on a very intense back-end operating system, software system that does security and dossiers, and basically it's checking you out. It's determining, where you go, how many times a day you're going to the bathroom, what department you work in, how many times you're clocking in and out, and where you're going. I mean, it's amazing.
Now, what companies are using these?
All Fortune 500s, I might add. And because we were both in the security industry, we both were invited by Kodak to go learn this product line because they wanted us to sell it and promote it to all the Fortune 500s, obviously. And so I come bebopping in there. I'm the only female. There's 8 of us. And it started with the woman saying, okay, I'd like everybody to go around the room and introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about your experiences with the industry. So it got to Steve, and Steve stood up and said, hi, my name's Stephen Meadors, and, I work for da-da-da-da-da. And he went on to talk about, what he does, and he says, but, my biggest issue is salespeople. He said, they just drive me nuts. He said, they'll sell anything to make a buck. He goes, I'm constantly jumping through hoops to try to make things work.
And you being a salesperson, working in sales for years.
It didn't go well. And, a lot of people think of sales as being a very lowly position, but I always held very high echelon, highly esteemed positions. You were extremely highly trained. You competed for these positions with hundreds of other applicants. So little do people know how much goes into becoming a professional salesperson. So when he said this, I was just like,
I see the fireworks right now.
So I stood up and I said, I couldn't stand anymore. I stood up and I said, excuse me, there are some professional salespeople, and I happen to be one of them. And he just kind of went like this in his chair. And that was how we met.
Plot of a movie.
And I enjoyed the whole week picking on him after that, and giving him a hard time. So that's kind of how I met Steve. And within 7 weeks of meeting each other, I actually flew back out to Michigan, where he was living at the time, and he asked me to marry him, and I said yes. Which, by the way, is unheard of, because I was 34. I had just turned 35, and I was a committed bachelorette. I was committed to my career. I didn't want to have the type. I really was avoiding marriage at all costs. I mean, I was always dating and involved and that kind of thing, but I really did not want to repeat all of the marriages that were around me. So I was even surprised when I said yes. I kind of looked around the room and said, did that come out of my mouth? So.
And now it's been how many years?
It'll be 18 years, November 18th, that we've been married.
Oh, well, this is November 10th. So
yeah, good reminder there.
Steve, if you're listening, it's almost time for anniversary. So now, how is Steve involved in the Royal Alliance?
Well, it's interesting, because when I was so bad off from the accident, on New Year's Eve, Steve got very sick, and he couldn't go to, I managed to get myself out of the house and go to a party down the street, and he couldn't come. And it ended up going into a day, that it went to 2 days, and he wasn't eating. So if you know Steve, you know that when he doesn't eat, that's very serious. And so I thought, man, this is really major. And I was getting concerned, and because we were not big proponents of the Western medical, go to the emergency room kind of thing, I was a little concerned what to do. I wasn't sure. This is way back. And anyway, I had received a referral to the mentor that came into my life for a couple of years. And I was told, why don't you contact him? And so I called him up, and he blew my mind on the phone. And he says, yes, he needs to come here. And I said, are you the right person?
What kind of mentor was this?
He was a hermetic, and he was very high, like he was equivalent to an archmage, and just a brilliant healer and expert in astrology, tarot. Let me think. I'm thinking astrology, tarot. I'm thinking there's quite a few of them. He was an incredible clairvoyant, and I learned so much, and it was really fun, because he used to come up to our house, and we would record him, and ask him all kinds of questions. He was just really opened my eyes to the Galactic.
Well, and also I remember you saying previously when we spoke something about when the two of you walked in And
That's
he
right.
actually saw the two of you together.
That's right.
And
That
he pointed
changed our
out
lives.
how it changed your lives, right?
Yes, the very first day we walked in, of course, Steve could barely walk because he was so sick, and he came in. He came in. I was like holding him into his office, and his eyes just got huge. And I thought, well, what's wrong with us, And we sat down, and he was really quiet, and he just kind of asked a few questions. And finally I said, you kind of have this look on your face, like, what's up? And he said, I've just never seen two together. And I said,
and you're thinking, two what?
I think exactly. I'm going, two what? What am I, a lizard or something, And he says, no, I've never seen two guardians together. He says they're typically very isolated, and they don't normally hang out together.
So you were thinking, okay, two guardians. What does this mean?
Right, and he didn't answer that. It was called Go Figure It Out Yourself, which has driven me crazy all my life. But in a nutshell, I've kind of come to the conclusion that the guardians, there's supposedly 7,000 to 10,000 of them on the planet. We have a very, very big role with the grid, holding the balance energetically for the planet through this ascension process. Our bodies are designed in such a way that we're capable of, we're like a lightning rod. So we're capable of really downloading a lot of this very high, intense light that's coming in now. And we're able to ground it into the earth. Mm-hmm. And basically, send it out. And what we happen to do without knowing it is we happen to convert that energy. So if we go into an energetic field that's very negative, we will typically, without even knowing it, will go to work on the higher plane and try to convert that.
Right.
And then what we do is we transduce it, and then we return it back to Father, Mother, God. Right.
And so what year was this in that you were identified as being a guardian?
I believe it was 2002.
Okay.
And
it was obviously no accident of the universe that the two of you ended up together and created this website and created the Royal Alliance.
Well, even our meeting in New York City was unbelievably synchronistic, because each one of us was not going to be going that weekend. Mm-hmm. And each one of us had our own story. Like, I had stormed into the president's office and said, you just hired me. You told me you were going to train me on this $100,000-something system. You still haven't lived up to your word. I want to go, or else. And so they jumped through hoops and they got me in. And that was what's so ironic, is normally salespeople didn't go to this type of training. It was much more involved with the technical side of things. Steve, on the other hand, he received a phone call from his upper management, and they said, hey, we can't go. You're going to have to go instead of us. It was literally that synchronistic.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I know you always felt like you wanted to make changes in the world. Yeah. And Steve had the same feeling about making changes in the world and making a difference in the world. So how did you start wanting to make a difference in the world?
Actually, my most vivid memory was when I was about 10, probably around 10, 11, or 12. And I was living in North Carolina. My dad was stationed out there at the time. And I was at a unbelievably gorgeous mansion. My mother was teaching piano and voice, and she would oftentimes take me with her to the locations. This particular location I loved because it was like going to a country club, And I remember walking around and dreaming and saying, wow, I would love to have this. This feels so cool. It's so free. It wasn't about my ego. It wasn't about, I had to compete with the Joneses or anything. It was really more about just the spaciousness, the freedom. And these people were very down to earth. Mm-hmm. And so, anyway, my mom asked me to get something out of the car, and I walked out the front door, which had these beautiful pillars, and get this, 2 huge lions on either side. Mm-hmm. And I walked down the stairs, and she had this half-dome, moon-shaped driveway, which, in those days really wasn't very common. And all of a sudden it was just this beautiful, the sun was shining on my face, and all of a sudden I heard this voice. And it said, you will have this someday, and you will be doing great things on this planet. And it was so overwhelming at that age, I started crying. It was an incredible moment for me.
Wow, that's beautiful.
I think I told my father, but I didn't tell anybody else because I didn't think anybody would believe me, you know.
And so what kind of changes are you attempting and making at this time?
Wow, that's a big question.
Or goals. You know, what are your immediate goals? You know,
Well,
maybe within the next year, say.
Within the next year, you know, right now what I'm intending to do is just to solidify the Galactic Roundtable, get all of our visions and ideas and, you know, think tank that, get that very solid, and attract the money and resources necessary to get this thing off the ground. Because the time is right now.
The time is right. You've been working on this how many years now?
I mean, it started when I was in bed, and I had the accident in 2001. So it's been in 2012. So it's been at least 11 years, you know, at least in the thought processes. But Royal Alliance was founded in 2007. So that's when we made that official. But we were working on it long before then. We've done quite a few things. Getting back to what you said, I think the most important thing for me is I've had to really force myself to do things like we're doing today, to come out of my little cave. And I know that other spiritual people can really relate to what I'm about to say, and that is that we have such strong overlays and memories of prior incarnations where we were absolutely, you know, beaten, hung, drawn and quartered, you know, disemboweled.
Right, all the,
you know,
past life.
absolutely.
Traumas.
If you were in that line to try to bring this sort of ascension process forward again, because I believe this, my opinion is we've been in this position many times, maybe 5, 6 times before.
Right.
And so
in different ages.
In different ages and epochs. And in different dimensions, who knows? I mean, right? Different world ages.
Right.
So.
And so now, being 2012, the time is ripe for people. People are ready for change.
Yes.
People are looking for change.
Yes.
So what kinds of changes ultimately do you want to make?
Well, the number one thing that always stands out is that we have been abducted, essentially, energetically. We have been stripped of our sovereignty, and we've been stripped of our royalty, and that's why we came up with the name Royal Alliance. Every one of us is a divine fallen master, for lack of better terms, and we need to remember who we really are. Now, we hear that a lot. We hear it so much that we get tired of it. It's like, what does that really mean? But in reality, we're here to assist in the transition, because this is going to be so mind-boggling for those people that don't have that kind of background like you and me, that have not researched, that have not been involved in, you know, conspiracy theory or channelings or healings or any of that stuff. You know, the changes that are going down right now are overwhelming to them. But can you imagine when ships begin to land? You know, and you know, the monetary system turns around and it ends up being taken over by the light, to the point where all of a sudden they're going to start hearing how we don't have to pay taxes. You know, they're going to go nuts.
Right.
They're going to be like, yeah, right. You know, so
people are so brainwashed right now.
Absolutely. So. And it is, I feel, one of the number one priorities of the project to assist in eliminating altogether this master-slave mentality, this subservience that is so programmed in ourselves at such a deep level. I mean, I suffer from it as well. It's so much there that it's a constant daily reminder to say, hey, knock that off. I shouldn't be thinking that way, because we are worthy, and we need to remember that.
Right. So you have talked about the project. So this is the project then.
This is a piece of it.